Rustbane, an excerpt from the travel diaries of Hammoth, Mann.
I witnessed a tragedy so immense I'm struggling to put words to paper. I shall try my best. I suppose it will be good to start from the beginning. In October of 1319, I was traveling once again throughout the fractured Kustoja kingdoms, visiting my familial relatives and old friends. I visited the Trotsky family, who were children and grandchildren of my grand-aunt of my mother's side. I've stayed at their place for about a week. It was very nice. Trotskys considered me somewhat Father New Year, since I brought with me so many exotic gifts for the children and the adults as well. Little Tim got a new train set, Olivia a porcelain dolly, Daniel a toy airship model, Tanya a tea set. For their parents, my old friends, I got expensive perfumes. For their extended family, who lived on the same property, I got a variety of knickknacks like pocket watches, dolls, toy bears, rolls of cotton to be made into clothes, flower seeds and books and painting materials. I also got gifts from the families. A new journal, a set of writing and painting tools, a few good new leather bags to replace the old ones. Semyon and I each got a scarf and multiple pairs of socks, handmade by the family's women. They also stuffed food inside us like we were piglets. Our stomachs were constantly round, and I'm sure we gained weight. Everyone included us in their activities and games. Me and Semyon got to try everything, from crocheting with my grand-aunt to reading fairy tales to kids from their new books. The landscape that their homestead was in was breathtaking. On one side, there were endless emerald highland meadows, as if spread out on your palm. On another side, mountain towered upon mountain, forming peaks and valleys snaking in between them. And in the distance, through the mists, you could barely make out the contours of the Corpse Mountain. Excuse me. This portion of my journey is so pleasant to recall, and what came after was so horrible, I hesitate to move on to it. Right now, I'd give anything to be back there. But after a week of our stay at the Trotskys' homestead, me and Semyon descended from the mountains into the grassy highlands, accompanied by a group of merchants heading into the Dwarven town of Malovnichi. If I recall correctly, its name translates to something like picturesque. We decided to stay there for a bit. The town had rich culture and an ancient history, having grown from a small settlement in the Bronze Age to a small but very densely populated town. You could walk down the city center and touch upon brick baked and placed there thousands of years ago. Not many dwarven cities could boast such an old age. The landscape of the great mountains constantly changed, both physically and politically. Most towns were buried by avalanches and ruined by warring armies, and then rebuilt from mere pebbles, not once and not twice, but multiple times. In this sense, Malovnichi was unique. It was about 5 days after we arrived and took up lodging in the local inn. At the time, I was sketching the city's skyline out on the balcony of the inn I was staying at. I first saw it about at noon. It flew from the west. Initially, it was but a shiny blip in the vast cerulean expanse of the sky, barely distinguishable. Over the course of the hour, it flew closer and grew larger. I saw people on the streets starting to stop and stare at it and gather in small crowds, discussing what to do. I went down to them. I heard them discussing whether or not it was slowing down or not, and whether they should wait 1 week or 2. I approached them to ask what was it that they were arguing about. They told me that a Rustbane was seemingly approaching. My custodian wasn't as good as it was decades ago, so I thought I misheard. I asked them what was a Rustbane. Most went back to their heated discussion, but one old woman led me to the side and told me it was a dragon, the most terrifying beast there can be. They roam the skies for hundreds of years, sowing destruction and grief. Their only need is to destroy. They emit noxious fumes, and whenever one falls and dies, its poisonous blood leaks into the earth, creating a deadland many miles wide. The curse of its blood, they call it the Rustbane, and sometimes the beast and the curse are conflated. Nothing of this world can live in such areas for many, many decades, and only the Fae make such places their homes. And she said, the telltale signs of a Rustbane fall and the descriptions of the curse are passed on through generations. Not every generation sees a Rustbane, but falls happen often enough that the oral traditions never die out. The last Rustbane fall on her memory happened a little before her birth, 100 years ago, and it happened on the other end of the Custoja Kingdoms, next to a small town, where a dragon collapsed into a mountain peak and erased it, and caused a great avalanche that buried the settlement. She told me that there's a few ways you can predict a Rustbane will fall, and how to avoid it. Firstly, a dying Rustbane will be flying very slowly and doing erratic movements in the sky. And if it doesn't leave the same area for more than a week, it's very likely it'll fall in the next 2 or 3 days. Secondly, if it's larger than a grain of wheat held at an arm's length by the time it falls, you'll die. The old woman's sister, who was nearby and heard our conversation, shared a small song in Custodian with me. I took the liberty of translating it here. Its wings are liquid glass, its tail is iron chain, its skin is rusted metal, its breath is toxic rain, it wanders sky unhindered, poisoning all with bane. I thanked them and went up to my room. I searched through my luggage until I found my spyglass. Out on the balcony once again, I used it to look at the creature more closely. It was a massive beast. The first thing I noticed were its wings, larger in proportion than any birds or bats. They were half transparent, with dark bones. In between them hung a thin, long body of a half snake, half lizard, with 4 clawed limbs. All of it was covered in rusted, almost black metallic armor. Or was it armor? I could swear I saw the bright of the sky through its joints and ribcage. It was also emitting fumes, like the old woman said. The dragon coughed and spluttered and shook its head, and clouds of dark grey shot out of its snout, maw, and ears. It also had something that looked like pipes on its back, which were also fuming. Its movements were very erratic. It threw itself from side to side in nonsensical spirals and patterns, performed deadly pirouettes and somersaults, and rose and fell in the air in random intervals. A thought crossed my mind then, that the creature was in pain. Builder knows where that came from. I sketched the beast above my unfinished scenery. I drew it bigger than it appeared in reality. Otherwise it would have been a mere dot. Still, it appeared to be larger, than a grain of wheat. The next week was exhausting. The town became more and more agitated. The Rustbane appeared to stop right above the western area of the town's outer farmlands and flew around it in dumb, uneven circles. Out of curiosity, I went out there to look at the beast more closely. I confirmed that it wasn't just covered in metal armor. Its body was armor, and through the gaps in it you could see its skeleton and some kind of glow. After a lot of surveillance, I managed to understand that the dragon was bleeding in the air. There was this glowing liquid of sorts which coated its small belly, chest, and arms. I duplicated my drawings and enhanced them with the details of the metallic hide, the joints, the plastic wings, and the pipes. I came to the conclusion that this beast was entirely mechanical. But I was absolutely certain that there existed no such madman genius who could have built this monstrosity. It felt entirely otherworldly. I thought to myself, those inventors at the Thunder City metropolis would have loved to get their grabby hands on such a creature. They'd study it, invent an entirely rideable pet dragon, and then sell us all one or even two. No, I thought then. Surely they'd make it into a weapon first. Simeon, who was nearby and collecting our things for travel, shared my concerns. He asked me, what if someone could direct where a Rustbane would strike? Such a technology would most likely spell the end of the world. We agreed that if anyone from the metropolis asked for any details, we would say we saw nothing. By the end of the 5th day, people started packing up and leaving Malovnice, going to the east along a small river, away from the dragon. I was asked to vacate the room due to extreme circumstances. Me and Simeon helped the inn owner pack. I paid twice for our rooms, and we all left together on the morning of day 6. We were on the road and traveling to a nearby village. They were by no means equipped to handle this amount of people, but our target was the city of Solidarność, 100 miles away. I heard the town mayor of Malovnice sent a dozen of the best horsemen ahead to Solidarność to warn the city to prepare for our arrival. We were a long, wide snake on the road, stretching at least a mile. 20,000 people and the same head count of horned cattle, elderly, crying infants, loud children, men and women, dwarves and humans, calves and cows and bulls. The biggest issue that immediately reared its ugly head was the food. The farmers were forced to abandon their facilities. There was no way to lock up cattle for the night, and a lot of it ran off during our escape. Thankfully, the weather at the time was cold and the food didn't spoil as much, but still there was no way to store it. There was only one pothouse owner in the whole town who owned ice boxes. They were loaded onto a large cart and pulled along by mighty oxen. At first, the owner tried selling the storage space to others, but the concepts of money and private belongings quickly lost all value in such conditions. I saw the most vile selfishness and the most heartwarming unity play out in front of my eyes during this difficult period. Me and Simeon tried to contribute what we could. Mainly we helped around with carrying stuffs, cooking and cleaning. Sometimes we were asked to watch the cattle or help with butchering. It was a profound experience for me. It was early on the 3rd morning since we left Malovnice. We've walked only about 5 or 6 miles, as we had stalled for a couple of days because of the cattle issues. And yet the Rustbane was almost invisible to the naked eye. The elders pushed on, however, waking us before sunrise. It wasn't yet safe, they said. We have to keep moving and fast. The entire procession came to life, had breakfast of what was on hand, and started to slowly walk on ahead. Then, somewhere about noon, the sun came down. In the blink of an eye, the sky dimmed, and there was a blindingly bright sphere of light, larger than the city itself. I felt intense heat burn my face and hands, like I was suddenly in front of a hot furnace, and yet everything was terrifyingly silent. The sun rose up into the sky, slowly expanding, and then the sound reached us, a deafening roar of 1,000 dragons ruptured our eardrums and shook our bodies. The sun that came down upon the earth grew and grew and grew, and beneath it there was an avalanche of rock and dust. Earth and pavements and houses and churches flipped upside down and reduced to water, coming at us like a tidal wave in the storm, and I didn't know what would eat us first, the grey ocean or the sun. The sun separated from the earth and dissipated into smooth, transparent clouds. Behind it, we saw a hellish tree the size of the entire world, with a thin trunk and a large crown of glowing orange leaves growing quickly into the sky. The avalanche collapsed into us. A wind of hot, pulverized dust covered everything. The sky, the ground, the trees, the people around me. It knocked me from my feet and threw me sideways and backwards and forwards like a twig. I could see nothing aside from the strange shapes flying beside me. I fell into something wooden and injured my arm before being thrown onto the ground, where I desperately grabbed upon the undergrowth. I climbed forward, finding a stable shape, a large rock, and hid underneath it, holding onto myself. I couldn't move my arm, but there was no pain. Not yet. The heat intensified. The dark grey storm around me turned a dull orange, like the world was thrown into a coal furnace. It roared around me, deafening me, scorching the rock I was hidden behind. I felt my eyes dry out, and I closed them tight, and still I saw orange and red through the skin of my eyelids. It lasted an eternity. Me, alone, reduced to a small crawling thing, helpless against the rage of the most terrifying beast, until just as suddenly it ended, as something huge collapsed into the rock I was hiding behind, breaking it in half and sending me flying into oblivion. I lost consciousness. I remember seeing a dream in that time. It was fleeting and agitated. I could hear beautiful music, and I saw people dancing to it. I didn't recognize anyone at the ball, and I couldn't understand why I was there. I looked for the exit, rushing through the dancing, faceless crowds, until I suddenly woke up. The eternal ball. I was on the brink of death. When I opened my eyes, the sky was clear and nearing purple sunset. Above me were people taking care of my wounds. One woman who was rebinding my arm saw me wake and called for Simeon. My friend and companion rushed towards me and embraced me tight. I tried to reciprocate, but discovered immense pain in all my limbs and torso. He told me to rest, Thankfully, he was relatively unharmed, as he managed to hide behind a couple of great trees with a couple other people, which saved him from being swept from his feet. He told me that he's spending our last medicines on making sure that I stay alive. We are out of blood boosters and bone grow. All alcohol has been spent on disinfecting the wounds. Simeon asked me to be very careful and make sure to not bother the wounds more than absolutely necessary. There was no rush anymore, anyhow. That made me fall into a strange depression, and yet tranquility. Simeon ran away to bring me food. I was left somewhat alone. Turning my head sideways, I saw a long line of people standing in queue to a small tent. People blinded by the violent light, vomiting onto the ground, holding onto their burned limbs. There at the beginning of the queue, I saw a doctor examining the survivors. She was checking the skin, the eyes, the mouth, the burns and the wounds. People were crying nearby. I saw a woman holding a scarred infant, and my heart broke. Anyone who wandered in too close suffered from the Rustbane curse, even long after the dust has settled down. Those who receive burns never survive longer than 2 weeks. I turned away, unable to stomach the sight. Despite being a seasoned adventurer, I never got used to seeing children, women, and the elderly in pain. I wanted to help somehow, but I wasn't able to. There was nothing I could have done anyways, even if I wasn't bedridden. Well, 2 weeks later, me and Simeon touched upon the road. I was up on my 2 legs again. With the help of a mule, we pushed our belongings upwards, back towards the mountains. Any semblance of organization was gone amongst us. The survivors broke up into small groups and continued the journey on their own. There was an overwhelming atmosphere of mourning pressing down upon the fields full of people. And behind us, the ghost of the infernal tree still smoked up into the heavens, amongst the charred ruins of Malovnice. This was the greatest tragedy I've ever witnessed.